Story number 1. The Haunted Snowmobile. December in Norway is a time when the landscape transforms into a frozen masterpiece. The fjords glisten under a blanket of pristine snow, and the nights stretch endlessly, cloaked in darkness pierced only by the shimmering northern lights. Our family had always dreamed of experiencing this winter wonderland, and when the opportunity arose to move to the remote village of Frostheim, we seized it without hesitation. I'm Eric Larson, a 40-year-old engineer, married to Ingrid, a schoolteacher, and father to our 8-year-old daughter, Anna. Frostheim promised tranquility, a break from the bustling city life of Oslo. The old wooden cabin we purchased stood at the edge of the village, surrounded by dense pine forests and winding trails that disappeared into the white expanse. It was the perfect retreat for our family to bond and embrace the serene beauty of Norwegian winters. The first few weeks were idyllic. We settled into our new routine, embracing the slow pace and the close-knit community. Anna adored building snowmen and sledding down the nearby hills, while Ingrid found joy in teaching the local children and Eric reveled in exploring the untouched wilderness. But as December deepened, an undercurrent of unease began to weave itself into our peaceful existence. It started innocently enough. Late one evening, as the wind howled outside and snowflakes danced against the windows, Anna tugged at my sleeve with wide eyes. "Daddy, I saw something outside," she whispered, her voice trembling. I glanced out the window, expecting to see nothing more than the swirling snow. But Anna insisted she had seen a snowmobile, huge, gleaming, and moving swiftly down the icy road without anyone driving it. Ingrid and I exchanged uneasy glances. "Are you sure, Anna?" Ingrid asked gently. Anna nodded emphatically. "It was real, Daddy. It was like it was chasing us." We dismissed it as a child's overactive imagination, perhaps fueled by stories of the Arctic spirits that the villagers occasionally whispered about. Yet, a seed of doubt was planted in my mind. The next night, the wind was fiercer, and the snow piled higher against the windows. As midnight approached, a soft rumble echoed through the house, followed by the unmistakable sound of a snowmobile engine slicing through the silence. I grabbed a flashlight and cautiously approached the window, heart pounding. There, illuminated by the pale moonlight, was the snowmobile Anna had described, racing down the road with no one in sight. It moved with an unnatural speed, leaving a trail of disturbed snow in its wake before vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "Anna, show me," I called out, trying to steady my voice. She hurried to the window, but the snowmobile was gone. Ingrid stood beside me, her expression a mix of concern and skepticism. "Maybe it was just a trick of the light," she suggested. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The following morning, the village was abuzz with news. The local police had discovered the body of a man in the nearby forest, his face contorted in terror. Beside him lay the remnants of a broken snowmobile, its parts scattered and twisted by the unforgiving winter storm. The man's identity was unknown, and the circumstances of his death remained a mystery. The only clue was a single, chilling note clutched in his lifeless hand. "They never stop." The tragedy cast a dark shadow over Frostheim, stirring old fears and suspicions. The villagers were tight-lipped, but the whispers grew louder. Some spoke of restless spirits. Others hinted at a curse tied to the land. Ingrid and I decided it was time to uncover the truth behind the haunting events. We delved into the village's history, visiting the local library and speaking with elderly residents who had lived in Frostheim for decades. What we discovered was a tale of sorrow and vengeance. Years ago, a young man named Lars Hansen had been involved in a bitter dispute over land ownership. The conflict escalated, leading to a violent confrontation that ended with Lars taking his own life in the very forest where his body was found. His snowmobile, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, became a relic of tragedy. It was said that Lars's spirit couldn't find peace, bound to the land by his unresolved anger and the trauma of his final moments. The snowmobile sightings were believed to be manifestations of his restless soul, forever reliving the night that claimed his life. Determined to help Lars find peace, we sought the guidance of Sigrid, a local medium respected for her ability to communicate with the spirits. She agreed to meet us at our cabin one cold evening, the northern lights casting an ethereal glow across the snow-covered landscape. Inside, Sigrid lit candles and arranged them in a circle around us. Her presence was calming, yet the air felt thick with anticipation. Lars's spirit is trapped between worlds, she explained, her voice soft yet commanding. He's tormented by his unresolved pain and the circumstances of his death. To help him, we must acknowledge his suffering and offer him a way to let go. Following her instructions, we performed a ritual of remembrance, sharing stories of Lars's life and expressing our desire to help him find peace. As we spoke, the temperature in the room dropped, and a heavy silence settled around us. The candles flickered, and I felt a presence watching us, a mix of sorrow and hope. Suddenly, the air shifted, and a cold breeze swept through the cabin. The sound of a snowmobile engine echoed in the distance, followed by the haunting melody of Lars's favorite song. Carried by the wind, Anna and Jack watched in awe as the outlines of the snowmobile materialized outside the window, its form glowing faintly in the moonlight. Sigrid began to chant, her words weaving a bridge between our world and the spirit realm. The snowmobile approached the cabin, its movements slow and deliberate. As it came closer, Lars's spirit became more defined, his figure transparent yet unmistakably human. His eyes, once filled with rage, now held a profound sadness. "Lars," I called out, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. "We're here to help you. Let us guide you to peace." Lars watched us, the tension in his form easing as he realized our intentions were pure. The snowmobile began to fade, the engine's roar diminishing until it was nothing more than a whisper carried away by the wind. The snow lifted gently from the ground, and the oppressive cold lifted, replaced by a serene stillness. Sigrid concluded the ritual, her eyes meeting ours with a mixture of relief and satisfaction. "Lars is free," she announced. "His spirit has found peace, and the curse is lifted." In the days that followed, the haunting ceased, the snowmobile no longer appeared, and the whispers in the wind were replaced by the gentle sounds of nature. The village of Frostheim began to heal, the tragic history now a part of its collective memory rather than a source of fear. Our family found solace in knowing that we had made a difference, helping a tormented soul find peace. The experience brought us closer, strengthening the bonds of love and resilience that held us together. Anna and Jack continued to enjoy the winter wonderland, their laughter echoing through the snow-covered trails, a testament to the enduring spirit of hope and compassion. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind howls just right, I catch a faint echo of Lars's song carried by the breeze, a haunting reminder of the night we listened to a restless spirit and helped him find his way home. It serves as a poignant reminder that even in the darkest of winters, the light of empathy and understanding can thaw the deepest of sorrows. Story number 2. The Frozen School. I've always been fascinated by abandoned places, the stories they hold, the secrets they keep, and the eerie silence that blankets them like a shroud. So, when I heard about the old school in the remote Siberian village of Zalivka, my curiosity was instantly piqued. Nestled deep within the unforgiving wilderness, the school had been deserted for decades after a catastrophic snowstorm claimed the lives of many of its students and teachers. Locals whispered tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena, especially during the coldest nights of winter. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to embark on a journey that would test both my resolve and my sanity. I'm Alex Petrov, a 34-year-old investigative journalist with a penchant for uncovering the unexplained. My latest assignment led me to Zalivka, a village barely marked on any map, accessible only by a narrow, winding road that disappeared into the vast expanse of the Siberian taiga. The journey there was grueling. The snowstorm that hit just as I arrived, making the already treacherous roads nearly impassable. My only companion was a sturdy SUV, equipped with all the essentials for survival in the harshest conditions. Upon reaching Zalivka, the village seemed frozen in time. Wooden houses, their exteriors battered by years of relentless snow and wind, stood huddled together against the cold. The air was crisp, each breath visible as a fleeting mist before being swallowed by the frigid night. I checked into the only available inn, a small, dimly lit establishment run by an elderly couple who greeted me with wary smiles. "Looking for the school. Are you?" "The innkeeper," Ivan asked, his voice gravelly from years of exposure to the biting cold. "Yes," I replied, showing him a map. "I want to document what happened there and see if there's any truth to the legends." Ivan nodded solemnly. "You're not the first to seek answers. But beware. The school holds more than just memories." Undeterred, I spent the next day gathering information. The villagers were tight-lipped, their eyes avoiding mine as they went about their daily routines. Finally, an older woman named Maria agreed to speak with me, her demeanor cautious but not entirely dismissive. "The storm was unlike anything we've ever seen," Maria began, her eyes distant as she recalled the tragedy. "It lasted for days, burying the school under meters of snow. Many children and teachers didn't make it out. Since then, the school has been abandoned, but on the coldest nights, people say they hear laughter and footsteps coming from the windows." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I pressed on. "Has anyone ever seen anything there?" Maria hesitated before answering. "Some claim to see figures moving behind the glass, shadows of the past replaying their last moments. Others say the lights turn on by themselves, as if the school is trying to welcome them back." That night, armed with my camera and recording equipment, I set out for the school. The moon was a thin crescent, barely illuminating the path through the dense forest. The snow was deep, each step crunching loudly in the silent night. As I approached the building, the imposing structure loomed before me, its windows dark and foreboding. I parked my SUV a safe distance away and began my trek, the cold piercing through my layers despite my heavy clothing. The air was still, the only sound my footsteps and the occasional distant howl of a wolf. As I neared the entrance, the wind picked up, howling through the broken windows and creating a symphony of sorrow. I entered the school cautiously, the door creaking ominously as I pushed it open. The interior was a frozen time capsule, classrooms with desks covered in dust, playground equipment entombed in ice, and walls adorned with faded drawings and broken fixtures. My flashlight cast long shadows, making the space feel even more haunted. I set up my equipment in what once was the main hall, the heart of the tragedy. As midnight approached, the temperature seemed to drop further, a bone-chilling cold that seeped into my bones. I settled into a corner, the eerie silence pressing in on me, only to be broken by the distant sound of children's laughter. At first, I thought it was my imagination, the result of spending too much time alone in the haunted building. But the laughter grew louder, accompanied by the sound of tiny footsteps echoing down the hallways. My heart raced as I tried to rationalize the sounds, perhaps animals or the wind playing tricks on me. Suddenly, the lights flickered on, bathing the hall in a harsh, unnatural glow. The sound of footsteps grew louder, more distinct, as if a group of children were running towards me. My breath quickened, and I strained to see through the bright light. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement, small figures darting across the room before disappearing just as quickly. Gathering my courage, I followed the sounds, moving deeper into the school, the laughter now accompanied by a mournful sobbing, creating a discordant melody that tugged at my soul. I reached the old gymnasium, its doors wide open, revealing a scene that made my blood run cold. Inside, the room was bathed in a ghostly light, the temperature dropping to an unbearable chill. Dozens of shadowy figures, children and teachers alike, stood motionless, their eyes hollow and empty, gazing directly at me. The air was thick with sorrow and despair, the lingering pain of their untimely deaths manifesting in their spectral forms. One of the children stepped forward, her face pale and etched with sadness. "Why are you here?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. I stammered, trying to find the right words. "I'm here to understand, to help you find peace." Her eyes glimmered with a mix of hope and sorrow. "You must remember us, keep our memories alive." As I attempted to communicate, the room began to shift, the walls melting away to reveal the night of the storm that had sealed their fate. The once quiet school erupted into chaos, children crying, teachers shouting, and the relentless roar of the blizzard outside. I felt myself being pulled into the past, witnessing the tragedy firsthand. The intensity of the experience was overwhelming, the pain and fear of those who perished echoing through me. I realized that the spirits were trapped, their sorrow binding them to the very place that had taken their lives. To free them, I needed to ensure their stories were told, their memories preserved. Suddenly, the vision faded, and I found myself back in the gymnasium, the spectral figures slowly dissolving into the air. The room returned to its abandoned state, the lights dimming once more. I took a deep breath, the weight of the experience settling over me. Exiting the school, I felt a sense of purpose. I returned to the inn, the first rays of dawn breaking through the night's darkness. Sharing my story with Maria and the villagers, I saw their expressions shift from skepticism to sorrow and understanding. Together, we organized a memorial service, honoring the lives lost in the storm and ensuring that their memories would never fade. The following winter, the legend of the frozen school in Zalivka took on a new meaning. The annual memorial brought the community together, a time of remembrance and healing. The school no longer stood as a haunted relic but as a symbol of resilience and the enduring power of memory. Reflecting on the experience, I realized that some places hold stories that demand to be heard, their echoes resonating through time. The spirits of Zalivka had found their voice, and in telling their story, I had helped them find the peace they so desperately sought. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the land in silence, I can still hear the faint laughter and footsteps echoing through the mountains, a haunting reminder that some memories never truly fade, and that every soul deserves to be remembered. Story number 3. Weeping Windows. I never imagined that moving to a new house could unravel the fabric of my reality. But as the winter winds howled through the vast expanse of Canada, our new home in Maplewood became the stage for a nightmare I couldn't have fathomed. My name is Daniel Thompson, a 38-year-old software engineer, married to Laura, a graphic designer, and father to our 12-year-old daughter, Emily, an 8-year-old son, Jack. Seeking a fresh start away from the relentless pace of Toronto, we purchased an old Victorian house nestled on the outskirts of Maplewood. The house, with its grand facade and sprawling grounds, seemed perfect for our family. The snow-covered landscape added a picturesque charm, promising serene winters and cozy holidays. The first few weeks were blissful. We decorated the house with twinkling lights, set up the Christmas tree in the spacious living room, and embraced the tranquility that surrounded us. Emily and Jack reveled in building snowmen and sledding down the nearby hills, while Laura and I enjoyed quiet evenings by the fireplace, sipping hot cocoa and watching holiday movies. However, as December deepened, an unsettling presence began to make itself known. It started subtly, the sound of wind whistling through the cracks of the old windows. At first, we dismissed it as the natural draft of an aging house battling the fierce Canadian winter. But then the sounds evolved. What began as mere whistling transformed into a haunting melody, akin to soft crying, echoing through the night. One chilly evening, as the snowstorm raged outside, Laura and I sat in the living room, trying to ignore the eerie sounds. Emily and Jack were asleep in their rooms, lulled by the warmth and safety of their beds. The crying sound grew louder, more persistent, as if the wind itself was mourning. I glanced towards the windows, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. "Do you hear that?" I asked Laura, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her eyes wide with unease. "It's like someone is crying out there." Determined to find an explanation, I decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, I approached the living room window. The snowflakes danced in the beam of light, casting intricate patterns on the glass. As I peered outside, the crying seemed to intensify, a sorrowful lament carried by the biting cold. Suddenly, my flashlight caught something, a faint, ghostly image pressed against the window from the inside. It was a pair of small handprints, smeared and smudged as if someone had desperately tried to reach out. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped back, the realization dawning on me that we were not alone. "Daniel, are you okay?" Laura's voice broke through my panic. I nodded, though I felt anything but okay. "We need to find out what's going on here." The next day, curiosity and fear drove us to delve into the history of our new home. Visiting the local library, we pored over old newspapers and records. What we uncovered was chilling. A tragic story that had been buried in the annals of Maplewood's past. In the early 1900s, the house had been the site of a gruesome murder-suicide. Eleanor White, a young woman, had taken her own life after a series of personal tragedies. Her husband, distraught and enraged, had killed her in a fit of rage before turning the gun on himself. The incident had left the town reeling, the house left abandoned and shrouded in sorrow. As we read more, the pieces began to fall into place. The crying sounds, the handprints. Eleanor's spirit was still trapped within the walls of our home, unable to find peace. The realization was terrifying, but it also ignited a sense of responsibility within me. If her spirit was suffering, perhaps we could help her find the closure she so desperately needed. That night, armed with knowledge and a desire to help, I returned to the window. The crying was louder than ever, a heart-wrenching sound that tugged at my soul. I began to speak softly, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. "Eleanor, if you're here, I want to help you. Please, let us help you find peace." The response was immediate. The crying ceased abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence that filled the room. I held my breath, waiting for any sign of acknowledgement, but there was nothing. Just as I was about to retreat, a faint, sorrowful whisper echoed through the room. "Help me." The words sent shivers down my spine, but they also fueled my determination. I knew that to free Eleanor, I needed to perform a ritual of remembrance, a way to honor her memory and acknowledge her pain. Over the next few days, Laura and I prepared for the ritual. We gathered candles, photographs, and personal mementos that we thought might comfort Eleanor's spirit. On Christmas Eve, the night that historically held the most sorrow for the house, we set up a small altar in the living room. Emily and Jack watched with a mix of curiosity and concern, sensing the gravity of the situation. As midnight approached, we lit the candles, their flames flickering gently in the cold winter air. We placed the photographs of Eleanor around the altar, hoping to bring her memories into the present. Laura began to speak, her voice soft but resolute. "Eleanor, we know your pain and sorrow. We honor your memory and the life you lived. Please find peace and let go of the darkness that binds you." The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows deepening as if responding to our plea. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence pregnant with possibility. Suddenly, the crying returned, but this time it was different, softer, less desperate, as if Eleanor was beginning to understand. "We remember you," I added, my voice trembling slightly. "You are not forgotten." The candles flickered, their light dancing across the room as if in agreement. The whispers intensified, merging with our words, creating a symphony of sorrow and hope. It was a delicate balance, the old pain meeting our compassion. Then, As if a weight had been lifted, the atmosphere shifted, the cold receded, replaced by a warm, comforting presence. The crying faded, replaced by a serene silence that enveloped us like a gentle embrace. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a promise that Eleanor had finally found her rest. The next morning, the sun rose over Maplewood, its golden rays piercing through the remnants of the snowstorm. The house felt different, lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. The handprints on the window had vanished, replaced by a pristine glass that reflected our relieved smiles. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences ceased. The crying was gone, and the house returned to its peaceful state. Emily and Jack were happier, their nights filled with sweet dreams instead of eerie sounds. Laura and I felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that we had done the right thing by helping Eleanor. Reflecting on the experience, I realized that some spirits linger not out of malice, but out of unresolved pain and longing. By acknowledging her suffering and offering our help, we had bridged the gap between the living and the dead, allowing Eleanor to move on from her tragic past. Each Christmas since then, we honor Eleanor with a small candle on the altar, a symbol of our gratitude and respect. The house no longer feels haunted, but instead, it radiates a warmth that comes from knowing that love and compassion can transcend even the deepest sorrows. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, I catch a faint echo of a sorrowful lullaby carried by the wind, a haunting reminder of the night we listened to Eleanor's cries and helped her find peace. It serves as a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the belief that every soul deserves a chance to rest. Story number 4. Whispers in the Frost. I've always been drawn to the untouched beauty of nature, the serenity that comes from escaping the chaos of everyday life. So, when my friends Lena, Mark, Sophie, and I decided to embark on a winter camping trip in the remote mountains of Northern Europe, I welcomed the idea with open arms. The allure of pristine snow-covered peaks, silent forests, and the promise of adventure was irresistible. Little did we know, the mountains held secrets far darker than we could have imagined. Our destination was a secluded valley known as Frostheim, a place few dared to visit due to its harsh winters and treacherous terrain. The journey there was arduous, with winding roads blanketed in snow and visibility reduced to mere feet. By the time we set up our campsite, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving us in the grip of a bitterly cold night. The first night passed uneventfully. We huddled around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter, the warmth of the flames a stark contrast to the freezing temperatures outside. Lena, always the enthusiast, insisted on telling ghost stories to add a thrill to our adventure. Her tales were entertaining, filled with exaggerated horrors that kept us on edge but ultimately harmless. As midnight approached, the wind began to howl, whipping the snow into fierce gusts that battered our tent. The temperature plummeted, and we wrapped ourselves tighter in our sleeping bags, seeking comfort in the shared experience. It was then that we heard it, a soft, haunting melody carried by the wind, like a lullaby sung by unseen forces. At first, we thought it was the wind playing tricks on us, the sounds of the forest merging with our imaginations. But the melody persisted, growing louder and more distinct with each passing minute. It was melancholic, filled with longing and sorrow, sending chills down our spines. Sophie, ever the skeptic, suggested it was merely wildlife, perhaps a bird mimicking sounds. But there was something unnerving about the tune, something human. Mark, who had brought a portable speaker for music, decided to check if it was malfunctioning. He fumbled through his bag, trying to locate the source of the sound. As he did, the melody abruptly stopped, plunging us into an eerie silence that was only broken by the relentless wind outside. "Did you guys hear that?" Lena whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Yes," I replied, my voice barely audible. It was beautiful but unsettling. We sat in tense silence, the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. The melody lingered in our minds, refusing to fade. As the night wore on, we tried to dismiss it, convincing ourselves it was nothing more than a figment of our imagination fueled by the cold and isolation. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the landscape transformed into a glittering expanse of white. The air was crisp, and the sun struggled to break through the thick layer of clouds. We packed up our campsite, the memory of the night's haunting melody still fresh in our minds. As we trekked through the snowy trails, the tranquility of Frostheim was both beautiful and eerie. The silence was profound, broken only by the crunch of our boots on the snow and the distant call of a lone bird. It was during this hike that Sophie stumbled upon an old, weathered sign partially buried in the snow. "Welcome to Frostheim." Curiosity piqued. We decided to follow a narrow path that led deeper into the valley, away from our planned route. The path was barely visible, overgrown with frost-covered vegetation and marked by faded footprints that seemed to lead nowhere. As we ventured further, the temperature dropped even more, the cold biting into our skin despite our heavy clothing. After what felt like hours, we came upon the remnants of an old village, its wooden structures half buried in snow and ice. The sight was both fascinating and unsettling, the silence around us palpable. Lena pointed out the remains of what appeared to be a communal hall, its roof caved in and walls scorched by fire. "This place looks abandoned," Mark observed, his breath visible in the frigid air. "But why would a village like this be out here?" Sophie, always the pragmatic one, suggested we turn back. But the allure of uncovering the mystery held us in place. As we approached the central building, the memories of the night's melody resurfaced, now accompanied by a faint whispering that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath our feet. Inside the hall, the remnants of a bygone era were scattered around us. Frozen plates on tables, cracked glass from broken windows, and old photographs pinned to the walls. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and decay, the silence broken only by the distant echoes of our footsteps. Suddenly, Lena gasped, pointing toward the far end of the room. There, standing amidst the ruins, was a woman dressed in a pristine white kimono. Her presence was ethereal, almost ghostly, and her eyes were dark voids that seemed to stare directly into our souls. She stood motionless, her gaze unwavering, as if waiting for something or someone. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and fascination. The woman did not respond, her silence more unnerving than any scream. Instead, she raised a hand, beckoning us to follow her. Against our better judgment, we found ourselves drawn toward her, the heavy snow outside now a distant memory as we moved deeper into the hall. As we followed her, the temperature seemed to drop further, the cold now a tangible force pressing in on us. The whispers grew louder, forming indistinct words that echoed in our minds. We reached a secluded corner of the hall, where the woman paused and turned to face us. Her expression was sorrowful, her dark eyes filled with an indescribable pain. Without warning, she began to sing, the same haunting melody we had heard the night before. Her voice was both beautiful and agonizing, filling the room with a sense of profound loss. Tears welled up in Lena's eyes as she whispered, "What happened here?" The woman continued to sing, her voice weaving a tale of tragedy and despair. Through her song, we glimpsed the village's dark past, a brutal massacre that had occurred on a cold December night decades ago. The villagers had been viciously attacked, their lives cut short in a senseless act of violence. The woman, it seemed, was a survivor, her spirit forever bound to the place, her sorrow manifesting in the haunting melody that echoed through the mountains. As the final notes of her song faded, the room was plunged into darkness. The whispers ceased, and the temperature began to rise once more. The woman's form began to dissolve, her spirit finally finding peace after years of torment. We stood in stunned silence, the weight of what we had witnessed settling over us like a heavy blanket. The old village seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as if the land itself was grateful for the release of a tormented soul. Exiting the hall, We made our way back to our campsite, the memory of that night etched into our minds forever. The journey back was filled with a newfound respect for the mysteries that nature holds and the spirits that linger in forgotten places. In the days that followed, we shared our story with the few locals who still remembered Frostheim. They confirmed the legend of the woman in the white kimono, a tale passed down through generations, cautioning outsiders to respect the land and honor the memories of those who had suffered. Years have passed since that fateful December night, and the experience has left an indelible mark on me. The haunting melody of the woman in the snowstorm serves as a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of sorrow. Each winter, as the snow begins to fall, I find myself reflecting on that night, grateful for the bond it forged among friends and the lessons it taught us about empathy and the unseen forces that shape our world. Story number 5. The Woman in the Snowstorm. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up in Tokyo, I dismissed the tales of spirits and apparitions as mere folklore, stories spun to entertain children and scare the gullible. But that December night in the remote village of Yuki no Sato would change everything I thought I knew about the supernatural. I'm Kenji Sato, a 28-year-old freelance photographer with a passion for capturing the serene beauty of Japan's countryside. When my friend Hiro suggested a solo trip to Yuki no Sato, a picturesque village nestled deep within the northern forests of Hokkaido, I eagerly agreed. The allure of untouched landscapes and traditional wooden houses, blanketed in pristine snow, was irresistible. Little did I know, this trip would push me to the brink of fear and challenge my skepticism about the unknown. The journey to Yuki no Sato was arduous. The train ride through the snow-covered mountains was both breathtaking and intimidating, the landscape transforming into a winter wonderland as we ascended. Hiro had warned me about the unpredictable weather, especially in December when snowstorms could engulf the area without warning. He handed me a map and a list of essential supplies before bidding me farewell at the station. As dusk settled, I arrived at the village, its lights twinkling like stars against the darkening sky. The streets were quiet, the only sounds the crunch of my boots on the snow and the distant howl of the wind. I checked into a small inn run by a kindly elderly couple who welcomed me warmly, their faces etched with lines of time and experience. That evening, I ventured out to explore the village, camera in hand, eager to document the tranquil beauty of Yuki no Sato. The snow glistened under the soft glow of lanterns, and the air was crisp with the scent of pine and wood smoke. As I wandered deeper into the forested outskirts, the temperature plummeted, and the first flakes of a snowstorm began to fall. I found myself disoriented, the dense woods turning into an impenetrable maze of white. The path I had taken seemed to vanish, swallowed by the relentless snow. Panic set in as the wind picked up, whipping the snow into blinding gusts. My phone had died earlier, leaving me without a map or a way to call for help. Cold seeped into my bones, and exhaustion threatened to overtake me. Through the swirling snow, a faint light appeared ahead. It was a soft, warm glow emanating from a small wooden house, its windows aglow with the comforting flicker of candlelight. Desperate for shelter, I trudged through the blizzard, each step a battle against the biting cold and the howling wind. As I approached the house, a woman emerged from the doorway, her presence both ethereal and unnerving. She was dressed in a flowing white kimono, her long black hair cascading down her back. Her face was serene, almost otherworldly, and her eyes held a depth of sorrow that sent shivers down my spine. "Welcome," she said in a voice that was both gentle and haunting. "Come inside. You must be cold." Without thinking, I nodded and stepped into the warmth of the house. The interior was simple yet elegant, with traditional tatami mats and sliding doors adorned with delicate paper lanterns. A fire burned in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the room. She gestured for me to sit, offering a steaming cup of tea. "Thank you," I replied, trying to steady my voice. "I got lost in the storm." She smiled softly, her eyes never leaving mine. "You're safe here. Rest and warm yourself." Grateful for the shelter, I accepted the tea and settled into a comfortable futon by the fire. As the storm raged outside, the woman remained by my side, her presence oddly comforting yet disconcerting. We spoke little, the silence filled only by the crackling of the fire and the howling wind. Hours passed, and fatigue began to take hold. I drifted into a light sleep, lulled by the warmth and the serene atmosphere of the house. But my rest was short-lived. I awoke to the sound of shattering glass and a sense of profound dread. The room was plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the flickering fireplace. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, calling out for the woman. There was no response. I fumbled for my phone, but it remained lifeless in my pocket. Heart pounding, I tried to navigate the room, my breath visible in the frigid air. The door stood ajar, and the cold wind howled in, bringing with it a sense of malevolence. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw her, a shadowy figure standing at the foot of the bed, her kimono torn and stained with blood. Her eyes, once serene, now glowed with an unnatural red light. A grotesque smile twisted her face, and her presence exuded pure malice. "Why did you leave me?" she whispered, her voice echoing through the room. "I've been waiting for you." I froze, unable to move or speak. The temperature plummeted further, and the shadows seemed to come alive, dancing around me like wraiths. My mind raced, searching for an explanation, but none came to mind. The woman stepped closer, her eyes piercing into my soul. "You must stay," she demanded, her voice growing louder, more insistent. "You belong here now." Desperate to escape, I turned and ran toward the door, but my legs felt like lead. The room seemed to stretch endlessly, the door remaining just out of reach. The woman advanced, her form becoming more defined, her presence overwhelming. The whispers grew louder, filling my mind with tormented screams and cries for help. Summoning every ounce of strength, I pushed past the fear and lunged for the door. It swung open, revealing the blinding snowstorm outside. I stepped out, the cold biting into my skin, and began to run, the woman's laughter echoing in my ears. The forest seemed to close in around me, the snow blinding and disorienting. Footsteps followed, untraceable and relentless, the red eyes watching my every move. I stumbled through the snow, the darkness pressing in, until I tripped and fell, landing hard on the frozen ground. Pain shot through my body, but adrenaline kept me moving. I crawled toward what I hoped was the path back to the village, the woman's presence never far behind. The storm intensified, the wind howling like a chorus of anguished spirits. Just as I felt my strength waning, a flicker of light appeared through the blizzard. It was the inn, its windows glowing warmly despite the storm. Summoning the last of my energy, I dragged myself toward it, the woman's figure looming in the distance, her eyes burning like embers. Bursting through the door, I collapsed into a chair, gasping for breath. The inn was silent, the only sound the storm outside. I looked around, expecting to see the woman, but the room was empty, the warmth and light a stark contrast to the cold terror I had just escaped. Hours later, the storm had subsided, leaving behind a blanket of untouched snow and an eerie stillness. I packed my things, too shaken to linger, and made my way back to Tokyo. The memories of that night etched into my mind like frost on a windowpane. In the days that followed, I tried to make sense of what had happened. Friends dismissed my story as a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and stress. But I knew the truth. Yuki no Sato was no ordinary village, and the woman in the white kimono was something far more sinister. Determined to uncover the mystery, I returned to Yuki no Sato months later, armed with research and a desire for answers. The village had changed, the once welcoming streets now silent and foreboding. I spoke with the locals, uncovering the tragic history of the woman I had encountered. Her name was Aiko, a young woman who had perished in a snowstorm decades ago while trying to protect a lost traveler. Her spirit, bound by sorrow and rage, haunted the forest, seeking companionship and release from her eternal torment. Those who encountered her were never seen again, their souls claimed by the unforgiving winter. Armed with this knowledge, I knew what I had to do, returning to the spot where I had first found her. I stood in the snow, the cold biting into my skin, calling out her name. I pleaded for her to find peace, to let go of the pain that held her captive. "Aiko," I whispered, tears freezing on my cheeks. "You don't have to be alone anymore. Let go." The wind howled, and the snow swirled around me, but I stood firm, my voice unwavering. Slowly, the figure of the woman in the white kimono appeared, her red eyes softened by a glimmer of hope. She approached me, her presence less menacing, the rage in her eyes fading. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice now filled with sorrow rather than malice. "I can finally rest." As her spirit dissipated into the night, the forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the oppressive cold lifting. The path back to the village became clear, the shadows receding as dawn broke over Yuki no Sado, painting the snow with hues of pink and gold. I left the village with a sense of closure, the haunting memories of that December night now tempered by the peace I had helped Aiko find. Yuki no Sado returned to its quiet beauty, the legend of the woman in the snowstorm becoming a cautionary tale of compassion and understanding. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind whispers through the trees and the snow falls softly, I can still hear her voice, a reminder that even in the depths of darkness, there is hope for redemption and peace.